Good evening, and thank you for joining us for this evening's research webinar. Once again, I'm live from my kitchen. I've tried a couple of locations in my house, and this one does have the best signal. And this time, if you were here last time, you will understand this. I've ensured my 17-year-old is suitably fed. There will be no oven timer interruptions today. So if you joined us for the early webinars, I hope you enjoyed the first four by Gary Cook, Maggie Cooper, Jane Sozabowski, and Ian Newington. For those of you who are joining for the first time, tonight's webinar, like the rest of the series, is open access, so they can be watched live for free this evening, as you are doing. If you or any of your colleagues would like to access them later, all our webinars are recorded for future reference, and access to the recordings is a BNMS members benefit, and these can be found on our members page. If you remember, please spread the word, and if not, please do have a think about joining our society. We do a lot of interesting and very useful things. Anyway, on to this evening's webinar. Today's presentation is entitled Working Strategically Across Research Councils to Ensure Collaboration at a National Level, and will be presented to you by Dr. Juliana Maynard, who you may already know from a previous panel, and already, lots of you may know Juliana anyway. So those of you who have met Juliana will already know what a truly nice person she is. But Juliana is so much more than a lovely person. She is one impressive woman. She is Director of Operations and Engagement of the UK National Total Body PET Platform and Head of Translational Imaging at the Medicines Discovery Catapult in the UK. Now that is a mouthful, but it's also one serious job title. She also leads the translational imaging team at the Medicines Discovery Catapult, which aims to advance innovative drug discovery, bringing medicines to patients faster. She works closely with academics, industry and small companies to accelerate their drug discovery programme, developing strategic partnerships and collaborations across the life science sector to fulfil strategic goals and maximise impact. She's worked in collaboration with the Medical Research Council and Innovate UK to secure £32 million worth of investment funding to implement total body PET infrastructure in the UK to implement widespread clinical deployment of the technology. So she's a very, very useful person to know. So, but Juliana is very much not an academic in an ivory tower sort of person. She's very focused on patients, and her vision throughout this consortium-led approach is entirely to accelerate delivery of life-changing medicines to the people who most need them. Juliana is committed to using the potential of nuclear medicine, both from a diagnostic and therapeutic point of view, to help to ensure the UK is a driving force in transforming the landscape of nuclear medicine imaging and drug discovery. So see what I mean? Pretty impressive stuff. As usual, Juliana's presentation will last roughly 30 to 40 minutes. And for those of you who are able to join us live, there will be the opportunity for you to ask questions at the end in our Q&A session, where she'll be joined by our panel of experts. The panel of members joining her this evening will be Ian Wilson, Heather Burgess and Mark Tolford. And once again, I'll be chairing the Q&A session at the end. So a little bit about our panel. Firstly, Ian Wilson is PET Engagement and Delivery Manager at the Medicines Discovery Catapult and works in that capacity alongside Juliana. I know Ian personally, relatively recently actually, that we met through some work that we've been involved with one of our regulators. And my experience of Ian is he's not only extremely entertaining, he's also very knowledgeable in his field. And I see him as a great facilitator for continuous improvement of the services we provide to patients. Ian's also lucky enough to live in the beautiful Lake District, which does mean he usually has to get up at 5 a.m. to go anywhere else. I mean, I thought I was the only one getting up at 5 a.m. being a radiopharmacist, but no, Ian mostly is getting up at the same time. But going back there at the end of the day must more than make up for it. Heather Burgess is Programme Manager in Infrastructure and Capital at the Medical Research Council, part of UK Research and Innovation. She oversees not only the development of bids for UKRI's infrastructure fund, but also the realisation of funded projects, such as the National PET Imaging Platform and a recent £50 million allocation of investment for a UK national infrastructure for mass spectrometry. Heather also led the delivery of the MRC's equipment funding opportunity for mid-range research equipment, which funds equipment across the MRC remit, including clinical and preclinical research. She has a background in epigenetics research with a PhD at the Centre for Trophoblast Research conducted at the Abraham Institute. So she sounds like another very useful person to know, doesn't she? And finally, Juliana will be joined by Mark Tolford, Deputy Director of Medicine Manufacturing for Innovate UK. Mark joined the UKRI Medicines Manufacture Industrial Strategy Challenge Fund team as Deputy Director in February 2021. Started out as a chartered chemical engineer and holds a degree in chemical engineering and a PhD in polymer process modelling from the University of Bradford. Mark's got over 20 years of experience in research and innovation in industry and academia. Began his career as a lecturer in chemical engineering at the University of Bradford before joining BNFL, later the British nuclear group Sellafield, following the closure of Bradford's original course. As a senior technical advisor to the waste vitrification plant, Mark was responsible for the delivery of a multi-million-pound annual programme of process improvement research from both UK and overseas contractors. In 2006, he joined Brightest Limited, becoming Technical Director in 2012 and CEO in 2018. At Brightest, Mark was involved in the scoping and delivery of several pharma, specialty and fine chemicals collaborative innovation projects, as well as supporting the development and implementation of a variety of novel primary and secondary manufacturing processes using the Brightest Process Understanding Toolkit. So, another magnificent panel of experts in the field at your disposal once again on a Tuesday evening. So I would like to thank Juliana and all our panel members for giving up their valuable time this evening to share their expertise with us all. As with last time, to keep things simple, we'll be using the Q&As tab. So if you wish to ask a question, and I very much encourage that you do try and ask questions at the end, because it is really interesting to be able to have an interesting discussion. So please use the Q&A tab to enter your questions. Don't use the chat function for questions because they may get missed, although you can use the chat function for general comments, information or feedback. At the end of the presentation, I will read out the questions logged in the Q&A session to the panel on your behalf for discussion. I'd like to thank our sponsors, SciTech, Curium and Siemens, who have helped make this evening possible. And I, for one, am really looking forward to hearing what Juliana has to share with us. So I hope you find this webinar both interesting and useful, and look forward to hearing your feedback. And so there we have it. I will stop rambling on. And without further ado, I'll pass you over to Dr. Juliana Maynard. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Just share my slides. Okay, so if everyone can see that, I'm just going to stop that and start again. Sorry, just go back to the beginning. So, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak to you all today. So it's really, really great to be here. And I've been asked to describe just some of the work that we've been doing, across our research councils to deliver the ambitions of our research strategy here at the Medicine Discovery Catapult. And in particular today, I want to go through some of the work that we've been doing focused on our imaging related ambitions and in particular in nuclear medicine. So I just wanted to start my presentation really on the importance, or why we truly do believe the importance of national research collaboration is so important for the work that we do. In that collaboration is so paramount in the field of research to be able to move ideas and programs forwards. It's a really pivotal strategy for advancing knowledge and innovation, but by combining our research and expertise, we'll enhance the research quality and our outputs will be better. So not only does it accelerate outputs that individual efforts would not achieve, it's also very, very, and it fosters knowledge exchange, enhances innovation, and gives us greater impacts. And for me, really understanding the significance of what research collaboration means and working together is so vital as we really look to explore and build our strategic development, looking at the opportunities we have, but also the challenges that we could encounter. So if we look at our research councils within the UK, so our UK Research and Innovation is made up of 7 research councils, Innovate UK and Research England. So we are very broad in our ambitions. We have our Arts and Humanities Research Council, Biotechnology and Biological Sciences, Economic and Social, Engineering and Physical, Innovate UK, the Medical Research Council, Natural Environment, Research England, and the Science and Technologies Facilities Council. And all of these councils feed into the objectives of the wider government level. And they all obviously have their own focus, but collaborating together really does enhance it and accelerates the outputs to getting the objectives and visions of what they want to do. And it's been really great to see some of those collaborations in place. So from a government perspective, our research delivery plan is the delivery plan that they put together from the Department of Science to really sort of showcase how we will build and grow our life sciences sector. And when we look at what they're trying to achieve from their imaging-led objectives, it's really focusing on unleashing innovation, accelerating science and technology, increasing private and public investment, and increasing UK productivity at a global scale. They want to help and support renewed investment in the economy, but fundamentally to make our country a science and technology superpower, to strengthen our translational pipeline, and pull those technologies of such we're talking through today, of advanced imaging, and working in partnership across those disciplines and sectors. And it's those collaborative and cross-disciplinary approaches that really enable us to gain that thorough understanding of human physiology and disease. The UK is a great place to start a business, and therefore having some of the world's best companies in the UK would enhance our reputation for reputation for science. We want to inspire, involve, and invest in innovation, and we also want to be able to accelerate the translation of university research and help those businesses exploit their strengths together to create a stronger culture of collaboration research. So I think with all of those objectives, it's very clear that collaborative and joint ways of working and working together as a team for the greater good of the country is how we will be successful in the UK. And it's fundamentally very much what we've underpinned all of our business cases and ambitions against as we've looked to support the government and all of our research councils. We've seen that existing research initiatives have been very successful. So in the UK, we've seen successful outputs from our cross-research council projects that are already ongoing. At a European level in Horizon Europe, and internationally with NSF, the National Public Health and Safety Organisation. So it's showcasing that this is the way in which research will work best. Recognising the strategic strength of collaborating, we also recognise broadly within the catapult that those common barriers to collaboration are there, and how can we identify those such that we are able to move forward and de-risk those. So these then do consist of institutional and operational silos, conflict of funding allocation, where do we position our funds, what are those research priorities, how can we choose which is the priority and where the pot of money needs to be positioned. And also importantly, and a financially really important part to note is in data sharing and IP. So if we're collaborating, working together, and we generate UK owned and IP within the project, who fundamentally owns that project? How can we help an MDC? So I want to just give you a broad introduction to MDC. We are part of the Catapult Network, and we were established by Innovate UK in 2016. So we're an independent, not-for-profit national centre for drug discovery, accelerating business growth and leading to improved outcomes for our patients. So we're here to really support all of our companies. We're based in Audley Park in Cheshire, and have a team of over 130 specialists now, with cutting-edge laboratory facilities on our footprint here in Audley Park. So just to go into sort of why we do exist and what we try to do. What we want to do is to enable the community to reshape drug discovery. We want to support our drug discovery innovators, so we want to make our world-class expertise, facilities, and complex technologies accessible to everyone to drive their informed decisions on their research. We want to connect the life sciences ecosystem. We want to really focus on what those key barriers to innovation are and how we can focus on areas of patient unmet need. And relevant to today as well is in industrializing those new technologies, developing and driving the adoption of those technologies and being better able to predict the probability of successful medicine discovery. When we started, our vision and purpose was set to really try and reshape drug discovery for patient benefit by transforming our UK great science into benefits through partnership. What we looked at what those sector-wide barriers were and how that was impacting individual drug innovators. So from sector barrier, having a lack of predictability of preclinical medicines discovery and a lack of connectivity across the life sciences ecosystem. Alongside that, a lack of essential technologies and skills and a lot of access to industry R&D. So where we focused to intervene was in our science strategy, where we focused on the translation from cellular-based in vitro assays to in vivo translational imaging into patients and in development. And what we wanted to do was then to develop and deploy those approaches to make drug discovery more predictive, efficient, and successful, and to establish programs around collaborative national programs, which is what we're going to talk through today through the formation of our national PET platform. From a lack of access to technology, so having that capital infrastructure, those associated skills, and the disease knowledge to really deliver the key data. Introduction also of new technologies into the drug discovery setting. So as I said, today what I really want to focus on is our vision of translational imaging in the UK and the work that we've been doing, and I've got some case studies to present on how we focus on our vision for translational imaging. So fundamentally, our overall objective was to maintain the UK at the cutting edge of imaging research, to drive biomedical research in a UK national capability, and in this example, using total body PET to support that novel research using physiological and systemic disease and drug development. This would in turn lead to a number of long-term outcomes, establishing a major international leading expertise and infrastructure in the UK, to maintain our innovation capacity in world-leading research. Not only the infrastructure itself, but ensuring that we had strategic development of radio tracers and methods as part of the NHS diagnostic service, with also a reduced timeline of the translation of those radio tracers into the clinic. This would give us improved UK standing in this global field. It would create novel UK-owned IP for the UK. We would promote clinical trials into the UK from UK-based centres, but also from Europe and internationally, and in turn give a cost-effective increase in capacity. So we have a number of activities that we want to focus on to perform to actually derive and develop this strategy over the years to come. The first being to implement a national centralised platform and building on those infrastructure partnerships, looking and developing radio tracer development and innovative trials, thinking of skills, enhancement and training, and ensuring that we had research programs that we could have pilot funding for SMEs and academics to be able to utilise the infrastructure. So I've just got a few case studies to go through of the work we've been doing, of which we would like to grow further. The first being a collaboration with MRC and Innovate UK through the formation of NPIP, our National PET Imaging Platform. So this was an investment that came from the UKRI Infrastructure Fund. And the UKRI Infrastructure Fund focuses on funding infrastructure to enable the UK to be the science superpower that it is. So from 2022 to 2025, the Infrastructure Fund will have funded £481 million for world-class research and innovation and infrastructure. And the project I'm talking about here today is an MRC and Innovate UK funded opportunity to the UKRI Infrastructure Fund. So the UKRI recently announced that they would be supporting 23 major projects over the next 5 years. And this included our national total body PET platform. So approval was given to establish our platform over 7 years of £32.1 million. And Dr. Heather Burgess is here today, who can feed into some of the activities who was pivotal and implemental in actually establishing the MPIT platform. And it's been great to work with her to do this. In terms of why we decided that we wanted to form a national PET platform, we really focused on the fact that, PET itself was growing within the UK and the need and use for it was. So last year in the UK, there was 45.4 million imaging tests, with greater than 250,000 of those PET CT scans. And 90% of those were using fluorodeoxyglucose. But we recognised that the demand and use was growing, not only from a diagnostic perspective. There was increased use of new PET tracers, for example, fluorine, PSMA, amyloid, tau, and many other tracers coming through the pipeline. There was also, and there is, a significant increase in emergence of radiopharmaceutical therapy. We saw the approval of lutetium dotatate, Pluvicto, and many more to come. There's the insertion of PET into clinical guidelines, and underpinning all of that, there was advancements in PET and PET-CT technology that we really felt was going to be a springboard to transform the way in which we're using PET in clinical research and also in clinical programs within the UK. So, as I said, it is an investment to bring and create the UK's first of its kind national PET imaging platform for drug discovery. And what we wanted to do was bring together that transformational clinical and commercially led research to enhance the quality and speed of drug discovery, and ultimately to industrialise the cutting-edge technology and the opportunities that it offered. We want to also be able to combine the total body PET infrastructure and access to PET tracers. So that's very much fundamental to our ambitions, and access to those world-class clinicians and management oversight to provide that unique clinical translational medicine resource, not only in the UK, but also globally and beyond. So NPIP is a national asset. We have 2 NPIP funded centres, which is our centre in England, which is a collaboration between King's College and Imperial, and our Scotland Centre, which is a collaboration between the University of Edinburgh and the University of Glasgow. We have our research partner, the Royal Free London, who is also a key partner within our NPIP centres, and our fourth scanner, well, the fourth scanner in the UK is currently recently been installed in KCL. And all of these scanners are served to be used across the breadth and length of the country, so they're nationally accessible for all. So what we want to do is connect those research projects together to build that bank of data for improved sharing and knowledge transfer for the UK research community, but ultimately to benefit the patient. So as I say, we're here to provide that national access, to provide national coordination and brokerage with strategic dissemination and growth. And having that centralised front door really allows that growth and exploitation to be done in an easier way and unlock those opportunities for research and development within the UK. So the second case study that I wanted to do today was one which we've been working on with Innovate UK, so the Medicines Manufacturing Fund. And this was a project in the Sustainable Medicines Manufacturing Fund to build a sustainable future for medicines manufacturing. So in partnership with the Department of Health and Social Care, Innovate UK have supported consortium building of up to 15 projects in sustainable medicines. And Dr. Mark Tolford is here on the panel today, and he can talk through the fund itself and the benefits that it brings. But I think for us, crucially, we recognise that having the total body PET infrastructure in the UK, which offered so much potential, would only be as successful as we hoped it to be if we had sustainable radio tracers to go in and also a sustainable supply of radioisotopes. So this project is a project that the Medicines Discovery Catapult and UK National Laboratory have been successful in forming a partnership in developing isotope supply within the UK. So in terms of why we felt that consortium-led approach was the best way for UK success in the radiopharmaceutical field was actually implementing a national supply and strategy to transform radiopharmaceutical development in the UK. So it's widely recognised that access and supply of radiopharmaceutical isotopes does remain a challenge. And whilst everybody recognises it remains a challenge, there are other countries who are investing significantly in developing that efficient isotope production methods. But the UK currently has no facility to produce a robust UK supply of those isotopes. So if we do nothing, it means our patients will be denied of those life-saving medicines that could otherwise be used elsewhere in the country. So the UK National Nuclear Laboratory have been working for many years now to develop a process where they can extract alpha radioisotopes from nuclear waste, including lead-212 that has showed so much potential in this nuclear medicine field. And MDC have been really delighted and excited. We've been working with the National Nuclear Laboratory for a number of years now, with our joint expertise, including the drug discovery expertise that we bring and the nuclear expertise from the National Nuclear Labs, to collaborate to make this the case then to finalise this to becoming a reality for the UK. In terms of what we want to do to take that and bring it into cancer patients, we want to establish a reliable UK-based supply chain for lead-212. So we want to have availability for clinical trials, for research-based purposes before going into clinical development, and ultimately also into commercial application. We want to accelerate those trials for those innovative targeted alpha therapies and support the development of novel radioisotopes and combination therapies as we move into further drug development. This will then enable the UK to be self-sufficient. It will also reduce our reliance on international supply, and it will deliver our sovereign capability. It also utilises an asset that could be disposed of as waste into an exceptionally valuable medicine. and it enhances our position as a global leader in nuclear medicine within the UK and a pioneer in radiopharmaceutical development. So we're really looking forward to building this in the next 6 months into our grand challenge. What we want to focus on in the Grand Challenge is that actually sort of building and growing our consortium, so broadening it out of our 2 partners now of just MDC and NNL, ensuring we have supply chain engagement, engaging our community broad and wide to be inclusive to all, understanding our barriers to success and how we can mitigate against those, and also how we can generate largest impact. And we intend to work closely with our regulators and bodies to ensure that consortium has success and we have all the key stakeholders as we grow into the case for the Grand Challenge and long-term funding. So really for this project, establishing that supply will ensure accessibility for the UK across the nation to go into our clinical trials and preclinical research. It gives us self-reliance and global leadership. A multidisciplinary approach will maximise the innovation and provides a unique route for us to supply that security of supply, and also with confidence in delivery that we can deliver to our patients. We want to enhance cancer treatment option and survival rates, and we also recognise from an economic perspective that we could boost the UK's pharmaceutical sector. And ultimately, as I say, we really want to drive through as a driving force in how we can drive the translation of radiopharmaceutical therapy within the UK. My final case study before I hand over to the rest of the team for questions, recognising that having radio tracers and also, access and supply was so critical, was that another relationship that is hugely critical, one we're hugely proud of being part of, is that the MHRA were critical to the success of the short-term and long-term ambitions for imaging within the UK. So what we've created in partnership with the MHRA is a trusted advisory group to create a community of trust. So to change the relationship between the regulator and the regulatee to implement a just culture. So to work together to really try and drive forward radiopharmaceutical research in the way that, meets the needs of our patients and what we want to achieve. So I think we're very clear actually where we want to be within the UK, in that we want to be innovative, we want to develop new radiopharmaceuticals, we want to be able to develop them, that's the pace that's required and also the pace that's aligned with other countries through a proportionate and flexible regulatory environment. But the regulatory framework, and we're all going towards the common goal, is that we want radiopharmaceuticals to be safe for the patient, we want them to be of the right product quality, and we want them to be efficacious. And both the regulator and the regulatee are working to that common goal. And what we're trying to create there is a risk-based approach to identify and assess, the harm benefit and actually how we could work together in unison to develop those novel radiopharmaceuticals. That in turn, in terms of our stakeholders, in terms of an NHS radiopharmacy, could then also lead to more increase in demand of actually radiopharmaceuticals and therefore increased demand for them as a trust. And we felt really working together would save time and cost and would be a really great way of working forward. So we've been really excited to see the first few meetings coming together, really recognising that if we're working together and we're working as a community, that everybody's in it together, we're all driving for the right outcome and the right way forward for our patients. We want to trust each other and we want to set an implementation plan and strategy in a really defined way of short and long-term outputs of how we can change this environment and how we can move it forward for the better, for the benefits of the patients. So just to summarise this case study, and I'll hand over to our team, is that we recognise that our radiopharmaceuticals are crucial for our early diagnosis and targeted therapy. We need to be safe, responsive and well-led. We need our seamless processes and consistency in delivering patient outcomes. But working across the community together and working with the MHRA, we truly believe that this is the way in which we'll be able to gain success at a broader level. So just to conclude, we've been so excited and delighted to work with the community over the last few years, and we really do genuinely, truly want to make, biomedical research accessible to all. We want to make sure that PET is that world-class provision in the UK, increase clinical translation and commercialisation of the technology, but also the radio tracers, have better access to the state-of-the-art facility, and ultimately getting outcomes for our patients and increase healthcare efficiency. So we're looking forward to doing lots and lots more with you all. We're here to support, and anything we can do, we are here to help. I hope that was useful.
Thank you, Juliana. That was great. That was really interesting. We have got one question. Can I just ask people just to put the questions in the Q&A panel, because I might miss, I just happened to go on to the chat, so otherwise I might miss them if you're in the chat. So Amin Chowdhury asks, says, hi Juliana, thank you very much for your talk. With your progress on lead 212, what is your opinion on how the REPPIR regulations can be navigated due to handling thorium-228?
So I think that's part of our ambitions of when we're developing the Grand Challenge, of making sure that all of those regulations are thought of. So would it start as that, or would it go down into generators perhaps? So it's very much fundamentally part of the work that we're doing when we're going through the 6 months of actually developing the business case, and then also coming into the Grand Challenge.
Thank you. We have no other questions in the Q&A, so I've written a few. Some of them might be dumb questions, as always, but I'm not afraid to ask this. Look like an idiot. So I was just thinking, as you were talking, about provision of services to patients, and the fact that in terms of the number of PET scanners per head of population, we in the UK lag behind the rest of Europe quite significantly, as in the last time I looked. And I wondered how, even if we have tracers, how can we maximize our infrastructure, if you like, to ensure that we can deliver these sort of services to patients? Because our PET scanner where I work at the QE is always maxed out. It's always booked up. So I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
I think it was very much our ambition when we started to put the business case together for the first 2 scanners, and I can let Heather answer this as well, is that we recognised that we could see the technology and the potential it had, but it was potentially still more of a research and clinical phase. So I think our ideal would be that in future years we have a critical network of scanners across the country. We're seeing the Royal Free now, who can really reduce the scanning time with really great image quality. So I think ultimately what we want to be able to do is hand over those research ambitions of MPIP into that sort of clinical research of importance, and make sure that provision is available, so that we can really grow and increase with the capacity that's forecasted across PET scanning. Heather, I don't know what you want to add anything?
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally agree. I think for us, one of the powers of hopefully having this initial investment is that we get over the activation energy of what's quite an expensive technology, to getting that out there, that people can start to see the power of it and make their own business cases as well for further investment. And I think absolutely we're going to see that it's a really useful investment for people in terms of getting that clinical throughput through, but also supporting the wide range of transformational research purposes for the equipment. So we hope that this will just be the start.
Thank you, Heather. There's a question from John Wasley. Thanks for a great talk. Are you able to give any more specific details about the Grand Challenge, timescales, and what will you be looking for?
I can hand over to Mark as well. So the timescales, we're spending, we started in January, and then we're going to be submitting our Grand Challenge by the summer. So it's all coming together really nicely. And then potentially that would look into multi-year funding, but actually also by being able to, to start early batch of sort of synthesis of the isotopes early, that we could then work through in the times of that program to get it ready for clinical in first time in man. Mark, have you got thoughts on kind of the Grand Challenge? And
yeah, I can say a little bit more about the Grand Challenge, I guess, in the context of the wider programme. So the Sustainable Medicines Manufacturing Innovation Programme that's funding this activity amongst the 15 expression of interest projects that were funded in this first round. The funding itself actually comes through Department for Health and Social Care from the industry rebates through the deep breath now. Voluntary Branded Medicines Pricing, Access and Growth, or VPAG scheme. And if you've seen the VPAG scheme, you'll see that this time round, rather than the rebates just going back into NHS budgets, they have ring-fenced an investment programme, total value of about 400 million, of which 80 million is the Sustainable Medicines Manufacturing Innovation Programme. There's also some investment going into the models that NICE use to evaluate new healthcare technologies, and also a clinical trials fund as well. But what we're looking to do is to fund, I think, probably between sort of 5 and 8 of these grand challenges from the 15 bids that we've had, and they will sort of, our expectations are that the funding for each will be up to about 10 million, and as Juliana said, that's over 3.5 years effectively, starting probably towards the end of this calendar year. So we're expecting probably around 1st of November start, and then running through till the end of the current VPAG agreement and the rebates, which will be the end of financial year 28-29. So that gives you an idea of the runway. But the idea is that these projects then will have the time and the committed funding to actually take that grand challenge concept that's being worked on at the moment and take that through to a sort of near commercial product, if you like. So in the case of this particular grand challenge, what we're looking at is, if it's successful, what we're looking at then is, having that process to bring lead-212 from domestic waste and actually turn it into isotopes that are of value to this community for clinical trials and then potentially commercial application as well. So that gives you a flavour of where it fits.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Juliana. We've got a few more questions, quite a few coming in now. So someone's asked, how do other universities access the scanners through MPIP?
So I can hand that one over to my colleague who knows he's going to get that one too. So
yeah, I
Ian.
knew I was going to get that one. First of all, yeah, so very simply, that's the reason MPIP was formed, to allow access by academics throughout the UK and also industrial partners, and that 50% of the time is allocated to those partners. Okay, so if you want to access those, that time has been ring-fenced. And it is my job to help you try and access that. And I will put my contact details in the chat. So so it's a very simple process that we, depending on which site you want to do the scanning, we connect you to the team there, and we go through a process to try and allocate time for you to do your study, and with the help of Siemens physicists to help you design the right protocol, and with clinicians on those sites. But I will drop my email as an answer here, so you can write to me post this meeting, and I can provide some slides in greater detail if you want some. Okay.
Thanks, Ian. So Gary Cook has said, I think it's GJR Cook. I'm assuming that's Gary Cook. If you're not Gary Cook, apologies. Thanks, Juliana, for an informative talk. Do you think the current legal framework for radiopharmaceuticals is agile enough to allow greater and proportionate regulatory flexibility in the short term? Yes, it is, Gary Cook.
Okay. It's an interesting question, and I think one that we absolutely need to try and be ahead of the game on. And again, we're trying to understand what those parts are that might trip us up. So when we've been developing sort of radiopharmaceuticals ambitions as a whole, we've been engaging those regulators at the beginning to say, this is what we're trying to create, this is the kind of infrastructure that we may need in the UK as a whole. So therefore, if we're going to form a consortium, they've very much said that it's involving them early, that would absolutely be pivotal to making sure that's a success. So yeah, I think there's a lot to be learned about what a radiopharmaceutical is, educating at a wider level. And I think it's working together to make sure that we can actually identify those regulatory challenges that I think is needed. So yeah, I really hope we can, catch up and make sure that we're, internationally and European competitive in terms of how we can generate those radiopharmaceuticals.
So next question, I'm not sure whether Heather or Mark might want to step in with this. How many total body PET scanners do you think the UK needs?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and it's a bit of an unknown, I guess, to this extent, that we don't know all the possibilities that this technology is going to open up for the UK. So I think it could be a case where you do have it becoming a really key replacement for conventional PET within the UK. But I think the main thing is that we provide access across the UK, as we've discussed. That so that the whole of the community can have access to them. Juliana, I don't know if you want to speak specifically to the vision of MPIP in the first instance.
Yeah, I mean, I think we got a good idea of how many numbers would be, it has to be geographically agile, and we want it to be across, I guess, all of the nations. And I think it would be great to see those grow and grow, because I think ultimately, what we want MPIP to do is to show itself in those sort of complex cases as being absolutely indispensable, and therefore the need for future long-term funding needs to be there. And I think ultimately that's our goal, and kind of the strategy of actually where we want to see it grow and exit as a a research-based collaboration. So I think the answer will come, I guess, as we can showcase what that industry research and clinical research can do, and then I guess the investment speaks for itself, really. So very much at the forefront of our mind is to try and get more and more investment, but the more case studies we can have on the the fantastic potential it does, we'll do that. But that's definitely our longer term ambitions, to make it an indispensable tool.
Thank you. So next question, I think I'll probably direct this to Ian, and if you can't answer it, you can bat it across to somebody else. Are there some contacts you can share from the MHRA or other regulatory bodies such as the HSE who support in negotiating regulatory and GMP hurdles for startup companies?
So as a simple answer is yes. Again, if you've got actual specifics and you can write to me at the email I've shared, I'm happy to make sure I can get the right contact for you. So the people that we work with at MHRA, they are not just focused on radiopharmaceuticals, they also look at specials medicines and things like that. So they are very willing to help and talk on that. And we can also help with connecting you to other people who can help with guidelines depending on what your specific question is. So yes, happy to provide contact details. And again, I'll answer this specific question with my email address, and I'll respond in due course.
Thank you, Ian. And there's a kind of follow-on question that you might want to carry on with. So another question is, what are the next steps for MHRA discussions, and how do you expect things to change to facilitate further access to radiopharmaceuticals?
Yes, so I suppose very simply, we're going to try and report this out at the BNMS conference in May, Gilly, and we're trying to publish a white paper that we will do that. And so without, giving the game away, we as a tag team, we've identified the key areas that we want to focus on. So as an example, we're looking at what is the perceived risk of radiopharmaceuticals, and actually by collecting that data and having open dialogue with the MHRA, we can hopefully change in the first instance, how the MHRA reviews that. And ultimately, in the long term, it may impact guidelines. Likewise, Gilly's took the focus to chair and focus on what does a radiopharmaceutical facility look like and what is good. So we're not just looking at influencing regulations, we're looking at influencing, the resourcing of radiopharmacies. And we're also looking to provide a strategy document of what radiopharmacy should look like in the next 5 years. So, we will publish that white paper and go into that in greater depth in May. Is that when the meeting is in Glasgow? In May.
Thank you. Maybe this might be another one for Heather. What are the criteria that UKRI looks for when selecting projects like MPIP for funding? How do future projects get proposed, and what's the deadline?
Yeah, absolutely. So the UKRI Infrastructure Fund is not an open opportunity for the community. It's councils that submit bids to that opportunity. However, we work really closely with the community in putting those bids together. So different research councils have different processes of how they get to that point of selecting, building and prioritising bids for that funding. And for MRC, what we have is combination of office input, but also we have a form on the website where people can submit their infrastructure ideas, but also people will approach relevant members within MRC to put those ideas forward. Often we have community groups putting bids together and really working to develop them with the input from MRC and other councils. So, for example, we've got a bioimaging bid that is being put together by Bioimaging UK at the moment. So it's really helpful where we've got that kind of organised community input already to put those ideas forward is incredibly valuable. And that was the case for this project where we were approached by members of the community and then worked with Juliana and the Medicines Discovery Catapult and with Innovate UK in putting this project together and then submitting through MRC and Innovate to put the project to the infrastructure fund. So it's a little bit of a mixed model, but we're always keen to hear ideas for infrastructures. In terms of criteria, it's really looking for things that are a national infrastructure and that really will provide a transformational infrastructure for research in the UK that can't be funded through existing mechanisms other than the infrastructure fund. Typically talking of projects, so sort of 20 million plus, but through to multiple hundreds of millions potentially. And yeah, we're always looking to discuss new ideas. I don't know if Mark wants to come in from Innovate's perspective.
No, yeah, I was going to say, but Mark, have you got anything to add?
Not a lot really. I mean, I think Heather's outlined the sort of process there really well. And I think one of the things for me is I think, you know, these bids, you know, to my mind probably stand a better chance where there is this sort of cross collaboration between councils to take them forward. So I think, yeah, NPIP's a really good example of that, with ourselves and MRC working together to get that across the line. I think, you know, if we can look to identify more of those sort of infrastructure bids that really do support translational research into manufacturing, then that's, you know, it adds greater value for the UK, in my opinion.
Thank you. So there's a question from James Ozabowski. Thank you, Juliana. Great talk. The nuclear medicine community is obviously delighted to see strategic investments in this field. Is the investment in large infrastructure such as a research reactor and high energy cyclotrons for production of medical radionuclides within the scope of research councils, or should we be looking to government to put together this type of large investment? That's maybe something, another one for Heather, and don't know, Mark, whether you can add something to that.
I'm happy to take a first go at that one, actually.
Yes, okay, yes.
So I think when we're looking at those sort of larger investments, it's probably beyond the Research Council remit, and it's one really that I think we should be diverting towards our colleagues in the Office for Life Sciences. At the moment, they have a capital grants fund, which is to support growth across medicines and medtech capability. So that is a sort of potential avenue for this, but it would need a company backing it. But it's certainly something that again, as UKRI and as Innovate UK, we would be supportive of, because looking at our kind of future plans for spending review and areas we want to invest in, it's fair to say radiopharmaceuticals is very much in there. So being able to build UK capability in this space, I think, is really important. But we do have to recognise we're in a very challenging fiscal environment at the moment, as we keep hearing from our colleagues in government.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Got a question from our President-elect, Sabina Dezdamovic. Thank you, dear Juliana, thank you for a great talk. Question for Ian. So Ian, you might need a pen. There's more than one question here.
Oh my gosh.
The access to the national platform seems more complex. For example, St Thomas's Pet Centre has a local committee overlooking the applications. What is the role of the local committee in this context? That's the first question. And according to what you've just said, the application would be through you and your team, ? So basically, would the application be through you and your team? And can the process be streamlined? And then final question is, when would the successful projects from the first pilot grant applications be announced?
Okay, yeah, so the role of each of those committees at each of those sites is really to provide advice to ensure that the study can be supported. It is not there to scientifically critique anyone's application. So we have to be very careful there. So if the investigator chooses to go to St. Thomas's, King's College or Edinburgh, the committee there will ensure that the project is resourced from a radiochemistry tracer provision through to physicists, through to whether you need local clinical support. And we are working with those groups to make sure that we can have a similar process across all 3 sites. It won't be the same. So we will still go through that. And as an example, King's College meet every month to 2 months, and so there shouldn't be a hinder on that. So that's answer to question 1. I forgot what question 2 was. Sorry, Gilly.
So question is, according to what you've just said, would the application be through you and your team?
Yes, it
And
can
can
be.
the process be speed?
It can. Yeah. So if someone wants to make an application as in unsure where best to suit that, we will help to campaign at the different sites to see where that study could be done. Right. So if you want to choose the site yourself, then you can go directly to them and we'll be involved secondary to that. So the process is flexible in that. Regarding release of the final list of who was successful in the initial NPIP pilot funding. So the current process is that people who've been successful have been informed, and they are currently working with Dr. Heather Burgess to confirm the final budgets. Once those final budgets have been confirmed by Heather, Heather will be in a position from the MRC to release that final list of who was successful. And we hope we can complete that in a matter of weeks, if not days, but we will see when those investigators have responded accordingly to Heather. Heather, was that good?
I think that's everything from that Sabina asked, and that concludes all our questions that from the audience, the participants. So I'd like to sort of close this session out by obviously thanking our lovely speaker, Juliana, and thank you to all our panel members. When we first started, I didn't see any, there were no questions. I was like, oh dear, this might be quite a short Q&As, and we've ended up having quite a nice lively discussion. So thank you all. It's been really interesting. So our next webinar is going to take place on the 13th of May. So you get a bit of time off over Easter. So 13th of May, and it's entitled Experience of Leading a Multi-Centre MRT Trial. And it's going to be delivered by Professor Jonathan Wadsley, who was on one of our earlier panels and did ask a question earlier. So he's been part of the audience for this. So registration for this is as usual via the BNMS website. So that really all that's left for me to do is thank you to you for joining us and to say see you next time.